Hello, everybody. This is Brian Tonsoni from Delphi Bracketology, a StudentUnionSports.com venture. We're here to talk NCAA basketball bracketology. I'm with seniors Jesse Scowden and Daniel Jakes, and we had an interesting weekend where the NCAA committee revealed its top 16 seeds, and that's where we're going to start this week's show, this Valentine's edition, as we are recording Tuesday morning before school on a very happy Valentine's Day. Daniel, the committee revealed its first 16 seeds. What did you think of those reveals, and what did we possibly learn?
I think what we really learned was that the metrics that they're really going to use this year, they're going to use big wins, the quality, or top 50 wins, the quality of those wins, and then some type of strength of schedule, bad loss mix. So I think that going forward, that's what we really need to dive into. We need to know our teams a little bit better. We need to know their top wins a little bit better and who they've really lost to.
It was interesting. We had a group get together on Friday to discuss our final top 16 seeds to see where we compared. And, Jesse, you ended up being right. You wanted to move West Virginia down. We had a huge discussion, and we ended up leaving West Virginia as a 3. And then later – the group had a discussion about whether we should move UCLA up to a 4. We didn't. We left them out of 5, and that was the only team that we missed. Talk a little bit about our process Friday and what we think about the committee's eventual picks.
I think we put a big emphasis on the quality of win, or the quality of the win. That's why we had a disagreement on West Virginia, and that's ultimately why. I think they put into strength of schedule as well. West Virginia had a really bad strength of schedule, and they had them as a 4. That's why I wanted them lower, because their strength of schedule was so awful.
And it turned out that you were right. It turned out that our talk about UCLA was right. So I think what we learned from Delphi Bracketology about the process is to keep going on our initial thoughts. You had a great initial thought on West Virginia. I woke up Saturday morning fearing that UCLA would be in. Not that we don't like UCLA, just that we want to have good picks. But we ended up with 9 of the 16 exactly seeded correctly, 6 others, 1 seed off, and we just had UCLA out. And UCLA was the 15th seed by the committee, and we had them ranked 17th, and we admitted that was probably our one miss. So I feel that our committee, what do you guys think that the early results of the top 16, how do you feel?
It's tough to repeat in any sport, if you want to call this a sport, but it's something that it's just a learning curve, and I think that going forward we can use it to our advantage.
Jesse, was one thing that you disagreed, other than maybe, you agreed with the West Virginia, one thing the committee did that you disagreed with?
I think Purdue should have been in over UCLA, just because of the fact I didn't care for their strength of schedule. Purdue is a powerhouse, I would say, so I feel like they missed that one.
And when we go back and look at that for our listeners, UCLA won at Kentucky, which is a top 3 seed, and then the night before they defeated Oregon, which was a top 2 seed, and I think the committee looked at those quality wins being better than Purdue's wins against Notre Dame and at Maryland. And even though Purdue had more wins and a better strength of schedule, I think those quality wins were the difference. And so I think the order, as Daniel said, is top wins, quality wins, and then strength of schedule, because the strength of schedule was not too detrimental in UCLA. So the order is what we're going to look at down the line, especially when we look at more teams than the top 16. So let's move on to a couple teams that have been fighting to get in over the past few years, and one has been fighting to get in for their whole basketball history. And let's talk Northwestern and Virginia Tech. Both had some big road, or Virginia Tech had a home win, and Northwestern had a road win. What do you guys feel about their tourney chances? Are they locked in, almost locked in? How would you regard those 2 teams?
I think they have to have a really good showing going down the stretch. I think in the end, with the bubble being so weak this year, I think they're going to be in, but if they go on a 5-game losing streak or so to some really bad teams like Rutgers or maybe NC State in the ACC, which even then they're a bubble team, I think if they go on a slide that it's really they're not going to be in. But if they can keep winning. They beat some teams that maybe they shouldn't beat. Northwestern picked up a really good win against Wisconsin this past weekend. If they keep getting wins like that, I think they're going to have no problem getting in.
Yeah, with the bubble being so weak, I think they both eventually get in. Northwestern I have as a lock. They had a really nice win at Wisconsin without their leading scorer, Scotty Lindsey. I think Virginia Tech's going to have to pick up a couple more wins. That 280 non-conference strength of schedule is going to hurt them if they don't get some big wins coming down the stretch.
I think, Jesse, you say something really important, that Northwestern lost a couple games in a row before beating Wisconsin, and all 3 of those games were without the Lindsey kid. And so to get a win like that, even with your top scorer out, and then the committee does understand that you're 18-6, but 2 of your losses were with your best player out. And another comment that I agree with 100% is the bubble. We're looking at teams with 11 losses being in the top 8 teams on the next in list, and we have 5 games left. And so unless those teams go undefeated, Northwestern would have to lose 4 or 5 games just to be on equal to those. So I think it's going to be a good year for Northwestern basketball. What is not a good year, though, is the rest of the Big Ten. Let's comment a little bit on what we learned from the committee and just learned from watching Big Ten basketball.
It's just a mediocre year for the Big Ten. There's not really any team that's pushing to be the best team. I think the only team that you can really say that from is Purdue, and that's just because their head coach is coaching them so well down the stretch. And I think that's something that many Purdue fans and Hoosiers alike can be proud of. They've kind of been the little brother in basketball terms to IU, in my opinion. I have no bias. I'm an Ohio State fan, but it's definitely something that it's looked down upon the committee as just a mediocre year for a mediocre conference.
I think it's been mediocre for the last few years. Last year, as you could see, the winner of the Big Ten got a 5th seed in the tournament. I think the cream of the crop, though, you got to give it to Purdue. I feel like they can, if they went out, they can run the tables for maybe a 3 seed, 4 seed.
Yeah, it's they got to look at scheduling and take a lesson from the Pac-12 last year when they kind of gamed the RPI, and I don't necessarily like that either. But you look at Purdue's out-of-conference strength of schedule; it's over 100. You look at Wisconsin's; it's 180. You look at other teams, Michigan and Indiana. I think the only Northwestern doesn't have a strong out-of-conference. Now, they tried. They played Texas, and Texas is having a down year. So, sometimes it's luck. But you look at all the other conferences and the teams that are in consideration or in our bracket, and they have a lot better overall strength of schedule, and they have a lot better non-conference strength of schedule. And that's got to be a lesson to the Big Ten coaches, that these sub-200, sub-250 teams that they're scheduling hurt their seeding. I mean, Purdue has, I haven't looked at their schedule, but with 5 games left, they only have maybe one chance, and do they play Wisconsin or Maryland again, one chance to get a top 50 win. And so they're stuck at 5 top 50 wins and 5, top 100 wins. They could probably get a couple more there. So if they're at a 5 seed in the committee's eyes now, I don't really see how they get any big wins to move on up. Wisconsin, if they end up winning, they're in first place right now, might be like IU last year, who won the Big Ten, but because of their scheduling was a 5th seed as the winner of the Big Ten. So the conference as a whole has to get moving in the right direction as far as who they play and the schedules that they play. It shows that it's important. Now, we're going to go to new metrics next year, which is going to throw everything, out of kilter from what we've done and what the bracketologists do and what the teams might not be able to understand how to schedule next year. But I think it just shows to schedule a little bit differently when it comes time to this, because a 5 seed versus a 3 seed or a 2 seed is a huge difference when it gets time for the second round and the Sweet 16. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about some teams that are on the bubble, and these are basically our teams. We think our seeds 1 through 30 are generally solid, and that includes Northwestern at 27 and Virginia Tech currently at number 30. You get below that, And I think St. Mary's is okay, but let's start talking about some of those teams 31 through 45, which would be our last set of at-large berths teams. And then let's talk about some of those teams that are outside looking in. Pick a team that you want to talk about, and let's share with our readers, our listeners, what we think they need to do to get in the tournament.
Well, one of those teams that I think that are kind of squeaking in and out is Syracuse. They've been a big one coming up. They probably one of the best teams at the Carrier Dome, it seems like. They took Louisville to the brink last night in OT. But, I mean, they started off so poorly. I think that some of those early losses will definitely hurt them. But it's as we saw this past weekend, it's the quality of wins. And some of those wins that they've picked up are huge. And I think that you can't really take anything away from them. And they're going to have plenty more opportunities playing in the ACC. They're probably going to have to play Duke at some point. They're probably going to have to play North Carolina. They've got quality wins on the horizon that they can look forward to possibly getting.
And the thing with Syracuse, they have 11 losses right now. And typically, if you get to 14 losses, you don't get in. And everyone plays a conference tournament. So you're going to get at least one more loss in the conference tournament unless you win it. And if you win it, you're in anyway. So that gives these 11 loss teams only 2 games to play with to have a chance. And Syracuse does have a chance to get some more quality wins on their resume, but they also have a chance to lose. Jesse, what do you think about the team that we have in that you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Michigan. They finally got a road win. They haven't had one all year. They still have multiple chances at home with Wisconsin and Purdue. They can be a huge factor in determining who's going to win the Big Ten. And I feel like they can get a couple wins down the stretch. They'll play at Northwestern and at Nebraska to finish the season. If they can, I can see 4 wins there. And if they get to 20, I have a feeling they're in.
And Michigan's coming on strong at the right time. And even though that's not the criteria, it's the whole body of work. It just looks better with momentum going with you at 16-9 and winning a few games. The team I'm interested in watching is California. They have 1 top 50 win. They have 4 top 100 wins and a 41 ranking strength of schedule. We have them as a number 9. They're 18-7. We've kind of put them in kind of by default here down the stretch. They don't have a lot of wins. How does that compare to a 16-11 Syracuse, who has 7 top wins and 4 top 50 wins and some really quality wins on their resume? That's the part that is tough for me, because I think you got to beat people to get in the tournament. And I think the conference, the committee has shown that the losses might not be as much of a hindrance as other wins. We're going to take a break here so you don't hear the school bell. We'll be back to talk more bubble teams in just a second. Okay, we're back. The bell has rung. We got 15 minutes till class starts. We'll be talking about 5 more minutes. Let's talk again. Any other team that's in our bracket that you would like to discuss? Georgia Tech's interesting to me. 4 top 50 wins, but is sitting there with a lot of losses. Arkansas 18-7 looks good, but they only have 2 top 50 wins and not quality wins. Anything else of teams in the tournament that we have right now that you'd like to talk about?
I think that you could really talk about Marquette. They're one of those teams that they don't have a very good strength of schedule, which if it comes down to it, maybe one team has a better strength of schedule than they do. They have a 261 non-conference strength of schedule. They do have some really good wins, though. They beat Villanova. They beat Creighton. They beat Creighton on the road. But, I mean, they've beaten some bubble teams as well. They beat Georgia, Georgetown, and Vanderbilt, which comes head-to-head. Who knows how they will take that into effect. So I think that's one of those teams that you could really talk about maybe not being in. But comes down to it, I think that they're going to be in just because of how weak the bubble is, like we've said.
Jesse, any other team that we currently have in that you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, it's crazy how you can consider a 12-loss team in the first 4 out still. Georgetown with a strength of schedule of 11. They are 7-11 versus the top 100. That's crazy to think, but they have a couple key wins. They beat Oregon, and they also beat the bubble team Syracuse. they still have multiple chances against Creighton and Villanova and Seton Hall. I wouldn't be surprised if they get up to 14, 15 losses and still be considered, which is absolutely crazy to think.
Which just shows how crazy the bubble is this year. I'm going to talk about teams outside the bubble. We do have Georgetown out right now, but in our top four, our next four out, or first four out, Wake Forest is interesting to me. Again, like California, a team that I think is quality, a team that I think should be in the tournament but does not have the resume as far as wins. Wake Forest has 0 top 50 wins. And I heard something the other day that's interesting that we might need to think about is if teams are so bad on the bubble, maybe we look at the team that didn't play their way out. And Wake Forest may be a team that didn't earn its way in, but it didn't also play its way out. It didn't win any, but it didn't lose any to the sub-100 teams, and it has a 15th ranked schedule. Maybe we have to stretch the criteria and put the Deacons in. That's our next move, I think, if we see some bubble teams lose, is to just move Wake Forest in with that strength of schedule. Tennessee is another team, Daniel. Talk a little bit about Tennessee.
Tennessee is one of those teams where, I mean, they have, like we've said, plenty of opportunities. They're going to have to play Kentucky again, I believe. I think they play Florida again. But it's one of those teams where maybe we don't look so much at putting them in rather than just like what you said, how we just look at the team that lost. They have a great strength of schedule, though. They have the 5th strength of schedule, 8 non-conference. But they're only 2-7 against the top 50, which, I mean, comes down to it. Those wins only will go so far. They had opportunities galore, though, at the start of the season. They played Wisconsin, Oregon, and Gonzaga, and North Carolina. So, I mean, 4 of their 7 losses were right there at the beginning of the first 2 months of the season.
I didn't prepare you guys with this question, but let's end this podcast on this. Kansas, Baylor. Baylor lost again last night. I thought Kansas had lost, and this was my question was going to be, what happens to the loser of Kansas-Baylor? If Baylor loses to Kansas at home, does Baylor drop out of the number 1 seed, even though they have a huge number of top 50 wins? What do you guys think?
I don't see it. I don't see how you can drop a team that has as many top 50 wins as they do, and the strength of schedule as they do.
So do you think they're locked for a number 1?
I think so. Unless they lose 2 or 3 more games, I don't.
Jesse, what are your thoughts on if Baylor loses, Kansas loses, maybe on the road, not so much of a chance to drop?
I don't think you could. I think you could drop them, but not the top overall. Or they're still number 1, but you can drop them from the top seed line. They still play at Texas. That could be a trap game, along with at Oklahoma. So that's the only way I could see them maybe slipping to maybe the 3rd number 1 seed.
I think we need to watch the winner of the ACC. I think the winner of the ACC, North Carolina's sitting there with 8 or 9 top 50 wins. If they beat Duke at the end of the year and win another couple games, they're up there about 10, 11 top 50 wins, and that'll rival Baylor's 10 top 50 wins. And I think this year they're going to give a little more credence to champions. And so I'm wondering if the ACC champion might not get in before Baylor does on that. So a lot of good basketball yet to play. We have about 4 weeks, 25, 26 days till Selection Sunday. We'll be bringing you the best. Check out us on Twitter at Delphi Brackets, or on the web at delphibracketology.weebly.com. You can see we update our brackets. We put these podcasts up for you to listen. Send us any questions via Twitter. This is Brian Tonsoni for Daniel Jakes and Jesse Scowden of Delphi Bracketology, a StudentUnionSports.com podcast group, and happy basketball watching. Thanks for listening.